Hey guys, welcome to Hughes History as we travel down the path of conquering world history. How about we take on ancient China this time, starting at around 2000 BCE. So get ready to grow your brain as we do a little bit of the giddying up for the learning. Here we go. Let's go get her done right now. All right, before we get to the good stuff, guys, we're going to talk about what we always talk about when we talk about history, and that's the impact of geography. Well, number one, when you look at a map of China, you can see that it's huge, completely big country, but it's also isolated in a sense by all of the geographical features that surround it. Right to the east, you're going to be in the Pacific Ocean if you want to go swim with the fishies. And then if you go to the north, you have the Gobi Desert. And directly next to that desert, you have another desert, the Taklamakan Desert. And then if you want to get even groovier, you have the Plateau of Tibet, which is directly to the west, about 14,000 feet that it rises. And then you have the Himalaya Mountains to the southwest, which are some of the biggest peaks in the world. Now, we have good news. Even though 2/3 of China is covered by desert or mountain, we have 90% of the fertile soil that's going to be trapped between two glorious rivers that you should know the name of. In the southern part of China, we have the Yangtze River, which is flowing off those Himalaya mountains into the Pacific Ocean. And then directly to the north, we have off the Plateau of Tibet, the Huangshi River flowing into the Pacific Ocean. And it's going to be the Huangshi, I'm going to say Yellow River. Why don't we just call it the Yellow River? The Huangshi River is the Yellow River. It's called the Yellow River because of all of the desert sands that are yellow that blow into the river, and when it floods, you get a yellow silt that's going to be 90% of the fertile soil of China, and that's why the ancient civilization is going to grow up on the Yellow River or the Huangshi. You could say either one. I'm good with either one, I really am. But at the end of the day, we want to understand that China's isolation is going to be really important to their growth in terms of them seeing themselves as the center of the world, and also that there's going to be much less trade with the other civilizations. But if you remember anything, remember the power of water. The Huangshi River, the Yellow River, in 1887, it flooded, killed like, 1 million people. That's how powerful it is. So let's go back in time and see how these early people of China mastered the water. So let's start in the very beginning. You probably don't want me to start in the very beginning because we have found our evolutionary ancestors in the land known as China that are 2 million years old. Direct lineage to human beings, we have Peking man who's 500,000 years old. And we know that these people lived in those river valleys and that they built small villages and they began to domesticate animals and plant food. So they were there a really long time. Where can I start? Well, legend has it that the first dynasty, and the dynasties are going to be kind of the periods of rules by different families throughout Chinese history. The first one is called the Xia Dynasty. And the Xia Dynasty is thought to be originated around 2000 BCE. And legend has it that it was an engineer, mathematician, a shout out to the nerds of the world who end up ruling the world. Now, this mathematician engineer, was the first one who could figure out actually doing flood controls on the Yellow River, which made him the man. And that, legend has it, is the first dynasty. How do we know it if it's a legend, Mr. Hughes? We know it because the Shang Dynasty, which ruled from 1532 BCE to about 1027 BCE, actually wrote stuff down. How about that? A shout out to the Shang for writing stuff down. We know that because we have found what are called oracle bones, and their religious beliefs took to them writing questions on these animal bones, then they put a hot poker in it and crack it and read it. How about that? But that symbology, those ideas that they wrote down are going to carry on to the Chinese writing system that we know today. But talking about the Shang Dynasty is pretty easy because they had written records, and controlling knowledge back then, controlling history, you control the Middle Kingdom, which is what they called themselves because they were all isolated and they thought that their stuff was the best in the world. But whatever, we're going to move on. Now, what else do we know about the Shang Dynasty? We know that their capital was at Anyang, and this was a city that was built differently than the other cities we've looked at in Mesopotamia, the Indus Valley, and in Egypt. They're not using brick stones. They're literally using wood. It's a city of wood. And we also know that there was a very strict social class system that developed in the Shang Shang Dynasty. We know that the upper class lived within the city walls. You want to talk about walls? These guys had walls that were 118 feet wide of just packed earth. It's thought that these 1.2 square miles of walls took about 10,000 men 12 years to build. So what I do know is they had some type of organized government. And they could get slaves and they could get peasants to do stuff like build those walls to protect the upper class who lived in timber-framed houses. They were living like gangsters back then. And outside the walls, bum, 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 bum. That's where the peasants and the artisans live. They live in these little hovels and they scatter around for food. So a very strict social class system is evident from the Shang Dynasty. We also know that military and defense was very important to the Shang Dynasty. Now, I talked about all those awesome geographical features that protected them forever. Well, not forever. That means that a lot of their technology is going to be focused on military. First with bronze, later with steel. But these are the guys that are going to come up with the cool swords and axes and knives and things to protect themselves from invasion. So let's talk a little bit about Shang culture, which is really Chinese culture, because unlike these other civilizations that disappear from the face of the earth and don't affect the real now today, the Chinese early civilization did. And what's most important to know is that it's actually the group that is more important than the individual. Family is the most important thing. And a lot of the religious beliefs actually revolved around family. It was thought that when you died, these ancestral spirits would hang out, that they would kind of rule the roost, and that they weren't gods, but they were kind of like spirits you had to deal with. So they'd give them sacrifices. They would honor them. And at the heart of Chinese civilization is honoring thy father, honoring thy parents, really the dad, because at the end of the day, it's very patriarchal. Girls were married off at the age of 13. They have to listen to their brothers. They have to listen to their fathers, and they live in the shadow of men. But this obedience, this kind of idea that you have to listen to your elders is going to translate into you have to listen to the ruler. You have to listen to the king. There's a sense that you have to bend yourself to authority in early Chinese civilization, and that probably carries on to today when we're talking about modern political systems and the evolution of China. Now, if we go back to religion, they worshiped a god called Shang Di, but they also believe that Shang Di was in charge of other gods. So they're polytheistic. They believe that there's a god for the sun and the moon and all of that great stuff. And again, back to oracle bones. If you don't learn anything, learn about the oracle bones for goodness sake, so you can write about that. So the first writing systems developed writing questions to ancestral spirits and gods on these animal fragments. They would stick those hot pokers in them, crack them, and then the mystics would read them in order for the king to rule wisely. So again, this writing system, which is really revolving around ideas rather than sounds, is going to carry on to Chinese writing today. You can speak the Chinese language, but you might not be able to read the Chinese word. So that's going to be really important in the sense of you're going to have a lot of different languages that are spoken throughout China, but the written language will unite them all. Of course, it means you're going to have a lot of people who can't read as well. You had to know like 1,000 symbols to be able to read a sentence. It's ridiculous. And again, if we take a look at kind of that technology and artisan department of world history, we can see that the Chinese are masters at weapons, at jewelry, jade, at clothing like cloth and silk. They figured out the silk thing. I was like 19 till I figured out where silk comes from. Comes from a silkworm. How about that? And that silk, which is some of the finest threads in the world, are going to be in China and China alone. It was actually a capital offense to try to smuggle silkworm out of the country. They're also at the forefront of things like music and calendar systems, mathematics, astronomy. So at the end of the day, the ancient Chinese, the Shang Dynasty, they're going to be the bomb, but they're not going to be the bomb forever, because of something called dynastic cycles, which I have to explain to you in the next section, which we're going to do right now. All good things must come to an end. And I'm telling you, the Shang, 500 years. They had a 500-year run. 500 years is a very long time. But eventually their day is going to come, and they're going to be replaced by the next dynasty, which is called the Cho Dynasty. The vocab right up on the wall. And they're going to rationalize them taking over, because really they're going to keep a lot of the Shang culture. The Chinese culture is a continuous culture. Different families, dynasties are going to come and go. There's going to be like 24 of them. But at the center of Chinese civilization are going to be the things that we talked about, like the importance of family and your elders and rulers. But what the Cho figure out is that they can justify themselves taking over with something called the mandate of heaven. And the mandate of heaven basically says that I have the right to rule you because God told me I have the right to rule you. But what the Cho Dynasty explains is that this is a cycle that doesn't last forever. Now, first you're going to have the mandate of heaven obviously give power to, the Cho because they're the most powerful and the wise. But with that mandate of heaven comes a responsibility. And like in most cases, when you're in power a long time, you're going to see corruption. And the cyclical nature of the mandate of heaven says that eventually when that corruption comes, you're going to have revolt. You're going to have the gods putting down natural disasters. You're going to have invasions because you're not doing the right thing. And that this loss of the mandate of heaven gives the people the right to rebel. It justifies rebellion. And that eventually through these revolutions, you're going to have a new dynasty which is going to bring peace and order. The mandate of heaven is going to give you justice. And eventually that, dynasty is going to get corrupt and then that's going to justify. You get it? It's like a circle. It goes on forever and ever and ever. So the mandate of heaven is going to be what the Chinese people believe in terms of where the power comes to the rulers. Now, let's look a little bit at the Cho Dynasty itself. Luckily for us, the Cho Dynasty isn't going to be a lot different culturally than the Shang Dynasty. That's going to carry on. But they are going to develop a different type of system for controlling the vast amount of land under their umbrella. And this is a system of feudalism. You better know what feudalism is because it's going to be popping up all over in Japan and Europe, so you might as well learn it now. And the main idea in feudalism is that the king can't control everything. He's got all these cities. There's no internets or anything like that. So he has to figure out that he's going to have to delegate power. So he might give a town to his son or maybe a noble in order to rule over it. In order not only to protect the king's assets, but to protect the populations themselves. Now the Cho, they also developed vast bureaucracy systems in order to run government more efficiently. They built roads to connect their cities and canals in order to irrigate the fields in a more proficient way. And they really mastered iron. And iron's a big deal. You got an iron sword and I got a copper sword, that's not going to be a very good battle. I think I'm going to get my head chopped off. So by developing iron swords and axes and knives and farm tools, not only are they going to be able to kill more efficiently, but they're going to be able to grow rice more efficiently as well. All right, it's almost time to take down the Cho because like I said before, all good things must come to an end. All right, guys, now even though the Cho Dynasty ruled from about 1027 BCE to 256 BCE, which is an awesome 700 years, they really didn't rule for 700 years. We know through written records that around 771 BCE, different nomadic tribes from the north conquered their capital city of Hao. They sacked it. They killed the king. What are you doing killing the king? But enough royal family members escaped to the east where they still kind of grasped to the dynasty. So they're in power, but they're really not in power. It's a breakdown in law and order. The different nobles and feudal lords are really running the show. If you have any doubt about how chaotic it was, historians refer to this time period as the time of the warring states. And for about 500 years of Chinese history, they're confused. They're lost in the wind. Now, they did make some awesome weapons. They've mastered the crossbow. They're using mercenaries and cavalries, and it's really awesome warfare, but there's no real centralized authority to be heard of. So we hope you guys know something about early Chinese civilization, the geography, the beginning of the dynasty, the oracle bones. You gotta remember the oracle bones. So I'm gonna end it here, guys. We hope your brain is nice and big and bubbly, and I'm gonna say it because I say it at the end of every video lecture because I know it's true with all my heart. Where attention goes, energy flows. We'll see you guys next time that you press my buttons. And I want to give a huge shout out to our first Hip Hughes here, studentsofhistory.org. That's designed for social studies teacher. If you're teaching U.S. history or world history, you want to check out this website. Interactive lessons up for the grabs. There are editable tests and quizzes and worksheets, online notes, all kinds of PowerPoints, resources that you're going to want to get your hands on. So go check that out right now. That's studentsofhistory.org. You're going to love it.